Welcome to the 52nd chapter of the book of Jeremiah, the last chapter of the book of Jeremiah, written by this man who was a prophet, who heard somehow words from God, the Logos and the Rhema, and wrote these things down, and then was told to go and tell the people of the destruction that was coming because of the sins. And he was persecuted by the people that were in the charge of Jerusalem at the time, very similar to what Jesus went through. But Jeremiah wasn't crucified, but he was thrown into a pit and taken out by a eunuch and survived. And then he went towards Jerusalem, towards Babylon, with the army of Nebuchadnezzar. But then they allowed him freedom. He went back, and the Jews wanted to escape after the killing of Ishmael, killing Gedaliah, the ruler that was set up by Nebuchadnezzar. And then they came to Jeremiah. And Jeremiah told them to stay, but they went to Egypt anyway, took Jeremiah and Baruch with them, and then Jeremiah and Baruch apparently came back. And now we have a summary of the end of what happened. Now, at the end of this last chapter, it's said that it was the last words of Jeremiah. So this may have been something written later. But it was written, and it says, being the 20th and 1 year of Zedekiah in his taking reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah, not this Jeremiah, but different Jeremiah, from out of Libnah. And he did the wicked thing that is Zedekiah before the Lord, all according to all as much as Jehoiakim did, and that was his brother, who was another son of Josiah, who reigned also 11 years. For the wrath of the Lord was in Jerusalem and in Judah, until of which the throwing them off from his face. And so finally he had it with them and threw them off. And Zedekiah separated against the king of Babylon. And that was pretty much it with as far as Nebuchadnezzar had it with the Jews. It came against them across the Fertile Crescent. We'll go to a map here. It was way down over here, Mesopotamia. Came across and all the way down, stayed in Riblah, but the army went on down, and it took Jerusalem. Well, where's Jerusalem on? It's not on this map, but it's right down in here. And so it came to pass in the 9th year of his kingdom, in the 10th month, on the 10th of the month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came in all his force against Jerusalem. And they encamped by it, and they built against it a rampart round about, which was a large dirt mound very high up where they could get into the city, shoot arrows and stones and so forth, back and forth. And the city came into conflict until the 11th year to King Zedekiah. And in the 4th month, the 9th of the month, even the famine was solidified in the city, and there were not breads to the people of the land. Now it's death by starvation or giving up. And the city was cut through, and all the men, warriors, fled and went forth by night according to the way of the gate in the middle of the wall, and the area around the wall, which was next to the garden of the king. So apparently they had an escape route, maybe some type of trap door that was with a tunnel, possibly, that would open up and they could ride their horses through this tunnel and then go out and escape. That's my guess because they were on horses. I don't know where they would have gotten the horses otherwise. But anyway, this area around the wall, which was next to the garden of the king. So that was up towards the king's palace. We had another map, so I should have put that map up. But anyway, he went out, and the Chaldeans were upon the city round about, and which was next to the garden of the king, and went by the way into the wilderness, Arava. The way he went was towards the Jordan River, it says here, because he was captured in Jericho. And the force of the Chaldeans pursued after the king and overtook him on the other side of Jericho. And all his servants were dispersed away from him. And we'll go back to that map. Jericho is at the top. I'm trying to see where the Dead Sea is. I think it's right here. So Jericho is right up here at the top. Jerusalem would have been down in, well, let's see, it would have been down in here. Jericho is right up here. And this Sea of Galilee is up here, and this is the Jordan River Valley. And they seized the king and led him, that is Zedekiah, and they led him to the king of Babylon in Riblah in the land of Hamath. I'll go back to the map. So Riblah is up here in Lebanon, not too far from the Euphrates, where he defeated Pharaoh Necho at Carchemish a little earlier. And here's Riblah right up here in northern Lebanon. And spoke against him with judgment. And the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah in front of his ophthalmos eyes. And Pontus, the Archontus, the Archon, the rulers of Judah, he slew in Deblathah, Riblah. And the eyes of Zedekiah were blinded. This reminds us of Samson. The same thing happened to Samson. And he bound him in shackles. And the king of Babylon led him into Babylon and put him into the mill house until the day of which he died, the same as would happen to Samson. I think he was in a mill house also, pulling the stone, grinding up the flour. It doesn't say how long it was until he died. And in the 5th month, the 10th of the month, came Nebuzaradan, the chief guard, unto Jerusalem. And he was the one standing in front of the king of Babylon. And he burnt the house of the Lord, the temple, and the house of the king which was close by, and all the houses of the city, even all the great houses he burnt with fire. And every wall of Jerusalem round about was demolished by the force of the Chaldeans with the chief guard. And from the needy of the people, and the rest of the people, and the ones being left behind in the city, and the ones falling in who fell to the king of Babylon, and the extra of the multitude, the chief guard moved. And the chief guard left behind some from the poor of the land for vine dressers and for georgus, George, for farmers. That's George means a farmer in Greek. And the stilus, a steel, a column of brass in the house of the Lord, which was in the front. They had names Joachim and Boaz, I think. And the bases and the brass C, and the bases were probably maybe for the curtains, I'm not sure. And the brass C in the house of the Lord, the Chaldeans broke, and they took their brass into Babylon. And the Stephanim, the rim, should have had that. You can add that to your English derivatives book. We have Stephen, means a crown. In a crown, rim, it's not the crown you see with the King of England, but it was more of a round, well, maybe it was sort of like that, but it was the rim anyway. And the bowls, and the meat hooks, and all the items of brass in which they officiated by them. Even the silver things, and the snuffers, and the oil flasks, and the lampstands, and the incense pans, and the cups, which was gold by gold, and which was silver by silver, the chief guard took. Even the 2 columns, and the 1 sea, and the 12 calves of brass underneath the sea, which these calves held up the sea, which was large enough to bathe in, or more than one, which King Solomon made for the house of the Lord. The weight of their brass was not known. It means it was great. And the columns, 18 cubits was the height of the 1 column, and a string measure of 12 cubits surrounded it. And its thickness was 4 fingers round about. So it was this thick, and was hollow in the middle. I think it was like 40 or 50 feet high, 60 feet. And the molding upon them was of brass, and the length was 5 cubits, superior of the molding of the one. And a lattice work in pomegranates were upon the molding round about, all of brass. According to these things was the 2nd column and pomegranates. And there were the pomegranates, 96 to the 1 part, and there were in all the pomegranates upon the lattice work round about 100. So all the brass. And the chief guard took Seraion, the foremost priest. Now this was not the same person as the Seraiah that was the brother of Baruch. It was a difference. He was the foremost priest, the high priest. And Zephaniah the priest being second, and that would not have been the Zephaniah that wrote the book, the prophet Zephaniah. This is a priest. And the 3 of the ones guarding the Odon, the way, trees. Comes from 3. Odometer, Odon. And from out of the Polios, metropolis, the city, he took 1 eunuch. Oh, lost it. Didn't have the link there. Who was supervisor of the men of the warriors. And 7 famous men of the ones in front of the king, being found in the city, and the scribe of the forces, acting as scribe to the people of the land, and 60 men from out of the people of the land being found in the midst of the city. Brought all these people, and the chief guard Nebuzaradan, the chief guard, took them and led them to the king of Babylon in Riblah, up there in Hamath. And the king of Babylon struck them in Riblah, in the land of Hamath. And Judah was transferred from its land. This is the people whom Nebuchadnezzar, and that's the end of that part here. Now it starts a new section. This is the people whom Nebuchadnezzar transferred in the 7th year of Jews, 3023. And earlier than he did other ones when he took Jehoiakim. And the 8th and 10th year of Nebuchadnezzar, he transferred from Jerusalem 832 souls. And in the 3rd and 20th year of Nebuchadnezzar, the chief guard transferred of Jews 745 souls. All the souls, 4,600. So all these people were taken to Babylon. And it came to pass in the 30th and 7th year of the resettling of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 5th and 20th day of the month, Evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year in which he took reign, the head of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and led him from out of the house of which he was guarded. So he took him when he was apparently 37 years. Came to in the 30th and 7th year of the resettling. So maybe he was even older than that. He reigned 11 years. So that if that was 11 years, so that would have made him 37, 47, 48, and then maybe he was 15 or so, 16, 40, 58, 62 years old. I don't know, maybe that when this happened, that this evil Merodach became king of Babylon, and in the year in which he took reign, the head of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and led him from out of the house of which he was guarded. Now that was Jehoiakim, not Zedekiah. I don't want to get him confused. Zedekiah was the one who was blinded and put in the mill. Jehoiakim was taken earlier by Nebuchadnezzar. And he spoke to him graciously, and he put his thronon is a transliteration there, above the thronon of the Basileon with him in Babylon. So he was set up higher than any of the other kings that were captured. And he changed his prison apparel, and he ate bread always in front of him, the Evil-Merodach, that is, all the days which Jehoiakim lived. And the rate always given to him by the king of Babylon continued from day to day unto the day of which he died. Babylon has now taken all these people. Jerusalem is in ruins. For 70 years it lies dormant until Ezra and Nehemiah come back at the reign of Cyrus, the king of the Medes, of which we went through in much of that was in the book of Daniel. We're going to skip Lamentations right here, go into that a little bit later at the end of the prophets. We only have one more left, and that is Ezekiel. And we will be starting the book of Ezekiel next. And after Ezekiel, we'll finish then Lamentations, and that will be all the prophets. And then we will go back and start, I think, in Exodus, because I had already did Genesis years ago, but it's still around. So then we'll go back then to Exodus. But next, Ezekiel. Hope you'll join us, and God bless.